iLook is the 14th episode of the second season of iCarly. The setup sounds promising. Carly, Sam, and Freddy finally get invited backstage at a mixed martial arts event to interview a fighter who, like his son, is a huge fan of iCarly. Naturally, an excited Carly begs Spencer and Mrs. Benson to let them go. Both refuse to let them because they think it's too rough for kids, and tension mounts. The kids' new plan is to hire lookalikes to hang out in the iCarly studio while they sneak out to the fight. From there, things fall apart. Spencer discovers the ruse, rushes out to intervene, and ends up getting hurled through a table by the guest fighter. But by the end, the adventure barely amounts to a blip. Spencer mumbles that Carly's grounded for 2 weeks, but then gets distracted by the trio dancing around with the fighter. Yeah, this isn't a great one. Right from the start, Carly is uncharacteristically spoiled and bratty. And shockingly, she learns nothing. She treats Spencer very poorly, and it's not even funny. She just looks pathetic, and I'm unwilling to get behind that. I like the detail that the show hints this is the first time Carly's actually grounded by Spencer, something that would actually happen in I Date a Bad Boy later this season, but the execution doesn't land. Spencer snarls that Carly is grounded for 2 weeks, but it doesn't happen until the end, and it's not mentioned in any other episode. In other words, Carly does everything on the naughty list and essentially gets out scot-free. There's no genuine comeuppance or lesson, just a dance party ending featuring a bra dancing MMA fighter. It's infuriating because the episode itself points out how petulant Carly is acting, yet then rescinds any punishment. I know that the show is about kids being kids, but Spencer wasn't even being unreasonable here. He's usually on their side and lets Carly do whatever she wants, but he's drawing a red line at something that might put her in danger. In fact, come to think of it, why is he against Carly going to this MMA event, yet he was totally cool with her fighting Shelby Marks? I know Shelby promised that it was going to be a stage fight, but there was an even greater risk there, and he didn't seem to mind. Which brings me to my next point. If anything about this episode is baffling, it's the glaringly obvious solution to Carly's problem. Have Spencer go with them. Spencer is established as responsible, even agreeing with Mrs. Benson that being backstage at an MMA fight is inappropriate for kids their age. So why the fuck don't they have him chaperone the trio? Carly just wants to interview the guy. She doesn't care about the fight. Spencer, volunteer yourself to supervise the interview. That's all you needed to do. Yeah, I know it would defeat the entire purpose of the episode, but it's such a simple solution that none of the characters ever think of. It's the kind of writing oversight that makes you wonder if the writers left their brains at home. It makes the episode feel lazy, like the writers didn't want to put any thought into a reasonable solution. Hell, there's a ton of potential for Spencer to be the chaperone because he's actually fun. You could even make the episode about him trying to be responsible, but because of his own excitability and eccentricism, he creates the most trouble for everyone and not the iCarly trio. That's in line with his character and something we'd expect him to do. Beyond the warped logic, this episode is just plain dull. There are almost no sharp jokes or standout moments to latch onto. The lookalikes themselves are as uninspired as the name implies. None of them actually look much like the real trio, and their canned banter feels flat. Mostly due in part by how they're instructed to just sit in the iCarly studio all night. Gee, it's almost like the writers knew this was a stupid idea and didn't know what to do with it. Even the MMA fighter Jackson Colt doesn't add much depth. All we get is one extended gag of him tossing Spencer through a table, and then he guest stars on iCarly at the end. Sam's one-liners, like the Uncle Carmine joke and her colorful descriptions about Mrs. Benson, evoke a brief giggle, but mostly the script just scrapes by on fumes. Scenes drip by, Carly pleading, Spencer scolding, lies falling apart. The pacing never kicks into anything exciting. By the end, I found myself yawning more than anything. After all that build-up, the payoff is poorly executed. The episode teases a confrontation and discipline, but it never lands. We see Spencer thrown around and apparently unconscious. You'd expect some big moment of Carly confronting her guilt or running into Spencer at home. Instead, the show cuts to a quick home scene. Spencer's already on the couch, grumpy but fine. He barks at Carly, then sees something on his computer, and immediately loses focus. Also, Carly shows a surprising lack of empathy for Spencer, which makes her even more of an ass. Yet again, Spencer doesn't do anything wrong, yet Jackson throws him into a table, validating all of Spencer's concerns in the first place. And she shows a brief moment of shock, but then she gets over it pretty quickly. You'd think there'd be some level of self-reflection, that maybe Spencer was right about not letting them go unsupervised. But instead we get nothing. Is Spencer denying her one solitary thing enough for her to wish him harm? The sketch where Jackson Cole dances with the broad that tells ghost stories is meant as a gag, but it doesn't do anything for me with how much I was expecting more. A story that was all about Carly getting her way ends with absolutely no resolution. There's no reckoning, no heartfelt apology, not even a comedic twist, just a shrug. The ending feels like an afterthought, tacked on once the real action is over. iLook Alike deserves a 5 out of 10. It's not the absolute worst iCarly has to offer, but it's definitely one of the weaker episodes. Middling, forgettable, and slightly irritating when you think about all the obvious fixes it ignores. A very average entry for Season 2.